morning. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. In today's update, breaking news. President Vladimir Putin is declaring Russia has become the first country in the world to announce approval of a COVID-19 vaccine. Putin claims it's passed all necessary testing. So this morning, we'll look at the safety concerns about Russia's vaccine and when one might be available in the U.S. as coronavirus cases reach 20 million worldwide. Also ahead, Seattle's police chief says she plans to step down after the city council voted to defund the police department. The announcement comes in the wake of protests against police brutality and calls to shrink the city's police force. So what does this mean for the future of the department? And the fate of the next college football season is expected to be announced this week as one of the top conferences in the country, the Big Ten, is reportedly on the brink of canceling the whole season. The big question now is, will other conferences follow? We'll have one of the top stars in college football history joining us live. But we begin with that breaking news. Russia saying it has approved a coronavirus vaccine. So what does that really mean? Here's ABC's Ian Pannell.
In the race for a COVID-19 vaccine, Russia just announcing they've approved the first vaccine in the world and will start administering it in days, despite heavy criticism it hasn't been properly tested.
We expect registration of the first COVID vaccine in the world. We believe it's a great step for humanity forward, and we believe it's a very important step for the whole world to fight COVID.
The vaccine said to be based on the same technology that helped them previously create an Ebola vaccine and will go to key workers like teachers and medics first. President Putin claiming it's passed all necessary testing, but many scientists inside and outside Russia very concerned over what they see as a hasty approach with just a small number of study volunteers. Russia essentially declaring victory before finishing its final stage 3 trials.
I think in the United States, we would demand a much bigger trial to be confident that the vaccine was safe in the sense that it didn't have an uncommon side effect and at least effective to some extent in the short term.
All this as Oxford, Moderna, Pfizer and others are moving forward with their phase 3 trials with at least 30,000 volunteers. US health experts optimistic. Speaking to ABC News, Dr. Anthony Fauci says he's hopeful that a vaccine will show to be effective in trials and authorized by the FDA within months, possibly as soon as the end of the year.
I believe there's quite a good chance that we will, and that should take probably by the end of this calendar year with vaccine available as we go into 2021.
And Ian Pannell joins us now from London. Ian, we heard the Secretary of Health and Human Services react to this announcement, essentially saying it's not about being first, it's about being effective. So how's the medical and scientific community responding to this?
I mean, I think that summarizes it quite neatly. I mean, scientists, not just outside in the rest of the world, in America, here in Britain and across Europe, but also inside Russia, have voiced concerns that this approval, this registration has come too soon. I interviewed, the guy who's the head of the laboratory that's developed this, and he admits that they're still going ahead with phase 3 testing. This is a crucial testing. So there are a number of different vaccines being developed. And when it hits phase 3, that's a key large-scale testing to check its efficacy. In other words, are there any serious side effects? And I think the argument from the scientific community, many people outside of this particular institute in Russia, is that it hasn't gone through substantial enough testing to know whether or not that it has any side effects. Now, again, the man that I interviewed, the director, he said that he had received the vaccine, his wife and his parents, that there were no side effects for anyone who'd received these early stages, and he was confident that they had a long history of testing a very similar type of vaccine, and therefore it was okay to approve. But like I say, they've approved the vaccine, but they're still testing it.
Kind of a strange order there. Ian, we know that this is kind of a unique circumstance and that the whole world is working on this. Is anyone else close?
Yeah, that's right. Lots of different companies, lots of different countries are all working on it, from China over to America, and also here in Britain there's a big program underway by Oxford University. They're now conducting phase 3 testing down in Brazil. Moderna in the US is commonly thought to be certainly at the lead part of a lot of the testing that's going place there. Yes, I mean, looking at it as a race, I think is just wrong. Everyone wants this to happen. Even the Russians today were saying, look, this is good for Russia and the world, but we're not in competition with anyone else. We just believe it's right. We're not trying to persuade Americans or Europeans to have our vaccine, but we think it's okay for Russians. And on one sense, you can kind of see why that makes sense. But certainly, America, Britain, and China all seem to be making great strides forward. The early indications are that we could possibly have a vaccine by certainly the fall, perhaps by winter time. That's certainly what Dr. Fauci expects. And here in Britain, again, they're talking about possibly going into production in the early part of fall. But we still have to wait and see. And of course, it's worth reiterating that many, many people, scientific experts, are saying even when we get a vaccine, it's going to take a long time to produce enough of it. It's going to take even longer to give it to the billions of people around the world who are going to need this.
All right, Ian Pannell from London. We appreciate the update, Ian. Thanks. New Zealand's biggest city is on lockdown this morning after a new coronavirus outbreak. 4 members of one family tested positive today in Auckland. Now, the country had gone over 100 days without any community transmission of the virus. Here in the U.S., we have some good news, though. A FEMA memo obtained by ABC News shows cases and deaths both went down from the week before. But the American Academy of Pediatrics reports nearly 180,000 children got COVID in the past 4 weeks. That's a 90% increase over the previous month. College football may be close to canceling its entire season due to the virus. While nothing has been officially decided, some major conferences are reportedly close to postponing all games or scrapping the season altogether. But some top players are pushing back, demanding the right to play. Kaylee Hartung is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with a closer look.
This morning, chaos and confusion over the future of college football.
It's been kind of a roller coaster emotionally for all of our players and our staff.
Reports the Big Ten is on the verge of canceling its season, leading to strong reactions from coaches in the conference.
The virus is going to be here whether we play football or not.
If the Big Ten, one of the most influential conferences in football, backs out, there's concern that the other major conferences could follow.
It's probably a very high percentage that ultimately the conferences will arrive at the same place.
With the season hanging in the balance, rivals across the country teaming up. In a joint statement, players banding together, including star quarterback Trevor Lawrence of Clemson saying, "We all want to play football this season." The players say they should be able to opt out without losing eligibility and call for universally mandated health and safety protocols.
We want to have a season, but we want to do it the right way.
Stanford's Dylan Bowles among the players who organized the Hail Mary effort to save the season.
Without having uniform mandated health and safety standards in regards to COVID, like there's no way that the season can go on. So the thing is, we want to be able to, as players, advocate for that.
This as fears grow over the long-term effects COVID could have. An Indiana University football player still recovering from the virus, now facing heart issues. His mother's Facebook post serving as a warning, writing, "Even if your son's schools do everything right to protect them, they can't protect them." The Mid-American Conference, which already postponed its season, saying his story contributed to their decision.
Leaders from the Big Ten and Pac-12 conferences are expected to meet today to take a vote. Will they postpone, cancel, or move forward with their seasons? Meanwhile, here at LSU and at other colleges all across the country, these football players and coaches are having to take this one day at a time with new health and safety protocols, no matter the uncertainty. Diane.
Kaylee, thank you. And for more on this, let's bring in ESPN college football analyst Desmond Howard. Desmond, you won the Heisman. You know what it's like to be a top college player. Many of these guys are now making the argument that it's safer for them to play and be at school than it is for them to be home. What do you think?
Well, Diane, I understand that these young men, they want to get on that gridiron. They've been practicing all their lives for this moment and for this pandemic to hit the way it has and pretty much put their season at risk. I understand the emotions that they're going through, but this is bigger than what they've prepared for at this point. I believe that if they're on campus, it's easier for the coaches and their staff to quarantine the players. I'm not sure if playing the games will be the right answer at this point. It's probably safer for them to be at on campus, in dorms, or in their apartments where they have that watchful eye of the coaches and their staff, and they can monitor them. But I'm not sure if they should play games at this point, because you have to keep in mind, a week ago, let me rewind the tape a little bit. A week ago, a lot of these conferences, they released schedules. So we were very excited. We were like, okay, we're going to have college football. Great. But then they took a hard pivot to the left this weekend because they received some medical information from their medical experts that I believe, Diane, points to potential long-term effects that may have to deal with the respiratory system and cardiac issues. And I think that's the major concern right now, not just from these commissioners of the Power Five, but from the university's presidents, Diane.
They got to look out for these guys, obviously. We know basketball and hockey have restarted their seasons in a bubble. That seems to be working. Contrast that with Major League Baseball, no bubble, several cases on multiple teams. So can you have a season without a bubble, and can you have a bubble in college football?
The biggest issue, Diane, with college football, so let's put it in perspective. College football is $1 billion industry, maybe $4 billion industry, right? So of the high revenue generating sports, college football is up there with professional sports. But the issue is student athletes and the safety of student athletes. You mentioned the professional leagues. They all are grown men who are getting millions of dollars, and they have a union to look out for their best interests. These college football players, they don't have a union. They tried to unionize in 2015. That got shot down. So they don't have anyone that's looking out for their best interests like the professional sports do. I do believe you can try to quarantine them, put them in a bubble, but don't forget, if you're at a campus where now they're going to have students on campus, and it's not going to be online, it's going to be students on campus, they're going to be mingling with those students at some point, and then you're at risk again. So that's an issue that the professional leagues don't have to contend with.
And, you know, you're talking about the professional players being union versus the college players not being pros. This has been something that's been debated for a while. And now, in the wake of not just this epidemic, but also the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter, we've seen players talking more about this. Several Pac-12 players recently wrote an op-ed denouncing the NCAA, saying that exploiting black athletes nationwide, that's what the association is doing. So do you think that this could change the landscape of college sports going forward, the fact that this conversation is again at the forefront, but with this new spotlight?
Diane, if there's any sort of silver lining that can come out of this this pandemic and how it has affected college sports, specifically collegiate football, it would be that they would unionize and that they would come together. Thank God that you have social media, because now you have these different groups, different athletes. They're able to link up and share their experiences. And now they realize that they have a very, very powerful voice. So I do believe that there will be some significant changes that will take place once we get back to what we will consider the new norm as far as college football is concerned, Diane.
So what's your prediction, Desmond? Do we have a season? And if not, what happens to these seniors?
Dan, no one wants to have a season more than I do. This is my livelihood. I love college football. It's tremendous for not only us, but for our country. It just seems like the presidents, they are very leery about the liability that they may face if these student athletes have some sort of ailments that they can trace back to the coronavirus from playing. So because of that, I don't think that we're going to have a season. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, though. I wish they can figure it out, and I do want us to have a season, but it's the health of the student athletes that's at risk right now, and that's the biggest issue.
All right, well, I know it's a lot of decisions being made. We appreciate your input on that, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this morning. Thanks, Desmond. Chicago has lifted a lockdown on parts of the city this morning. It was put in place after violence and looting yesterday morning along Chicago's upscale shopping district known as the Magnificent Mile. Alex Perez is in Chicago with more on that.
Overnight, a curfew enforced in Chicago. The city's bridges lifted as Chicago police worked through the night to maintain the peace.
Fire, so can I get another unit over here?
All this after a mob of looters tore through Chicago's Magnificent Mile early Monday morning, shattering windows at dozens of businesses, stealing merchandise.
This is where we live. This is our home. This is our front yard. And it's upsetting.
The ordeal, police say, stemming from a police-involved shooting Sunday. Authorities say a 20-year-old suspect who allegedly fired at police was shot and injured. False information about that shooting, according to investigators, spread on social media, fueling the melee.
This was not an organized protest. Rather, this was an incident of pure criminality.
Investigators now combing through surveillance images to identify and arrest looters.
This is not legitimate First Amendment protected speech. These were not poor people engaged in petty theft to feed themselves and their families. This was straight up felony criminal conduct.
That's Alex Perez with that report. Thanks, Alex. And an explosive new book about the royal family is out today. Finding Freedom is a biography about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, focusing on their exit from official royal life. The book claims Meghan struggled to settle into her new family and places some blame on Duchess Kate. ABC News royal contributor Omid Scobie is one of the authors and joins us now from London. Omid, thanks for being on. So we know that Harry and Meghan officially resigned as working royals in the spring, but this whole thing seemed to happen pretty quickly. Why such an abrupt exit?
Well, I think one of the things that this book really paints out is that actually this had been ongoing for some time in the background. The couple really, ever since the birth of Archie, had grown ever increasingly frustrated within their roles within the palace, or lack of roles, I should say. And of course, those constant attacks from sections of the British media were something that they needed help and support on. And whilst they made a lot of these grievances known within the institution, they found that time and time again that fell on deaf ears. And there grew the idea to perhaps go it alone or change the way that they worked. And it took us to where we are today.
You know, there's so much personal detail in this book. I'm curious, did they weigh in on this at all or give you any sort of approval?
There's so much rumours about whether the Sussexes cooperated or whether we have secret interviews with Harry and Meghan, and I'm afraid that's just not the case. We had incredible access to their inner circle, those people that have been friends with them for a long time, people they've worked with in the past and present, and it really helped build a textured portrait of who they are, because one of the things I really wanted this book to do was to almost rehumanise the Sussexes in a way, because I felt like they had almost turned into caricatures by the pages of our tabloids. And we wanted to get to the bottom of a lot of the mistruths that are out there.
Well, and you say that this was in the works for longer than it was in the public eye. So when did things start to unravel between the couple and the rest of the royal family?
Well, I don't think that things unraveled so much with them and the royal family. There's this sort of distinct separation between the royal family and the institution of the monarchy. And it was within the institution, the courtiers, the aides that really look after the lives and schedules and everything to do with members of the royal family. That's where Harry and Meghan found a lot of their problems. They realised that information about their personal lives was leaking onto the pages of the tabloids, often twisted to make the couple look bad for a number of different reasons. And I think Harry was well aware of the things that go on behind the scenes. He, of course, knows a lot of it through the eyes and the voice of his own mother. And he was very protective of Meghan. Of course, once they had Archie, they also wanted to protect him from a future that could be potentially problematic if they didn't do something about it. So this was a very long story for them, and really a long journey to really find this new chapter that they were looking for. As we know, they tried to make it work within the institution. They suggested a 50-50 working model, and it didn't work out. It wasn't accepted.
You know, when they got engaged, the fact that Meghan was divorced, that she was American, that she's part African-American, all of that played a role in the coverage, front and center. So did that also play a role in some of the issues that they faced?
Absolutely. A lot of the struggles that they faced within the institution was because Meghan was different. Where she ticked boxes that really should be celebrated, they found that within the walls of the House of Windsor and also within the pages of certain tabloid press here in the UK, those differences were almost being weaponized against her. We saw in the papers this Duchess difficult narrative emerge. It was not only fed by insiders within the palace giving negative information about Meghan to the press, but also fed read off a number of sexist and racist tropes about Meghan, that she was too demanding, too difficult, too different, too everything. And of course, that's extremely problematic. And one of the things that I hope that we have a conversation about now that this book's out, that we get to see the impact that those sorts of words can have on someone.
There's also been some speculation of a feud between the sister-in-laws, between Meghan and Kate. Any truth to that?
Well, isn't it funny that the two successful women are immediately pitted against each other in the pages of the tabloids? And we saw that dueling duchesses narrative quickly emerge. And actually, when you look into the story, and we really go into great detail about this in the book, the problem really lied between Harry and William. The fractures were on their side, and it was one of the things that prevented Kate and Meghan from really ever getting closer to each other. But I know also there were points at which Meghan expected Kate, a former newcomer, to really be someone that she could lean on in some of the more difficult times, particularly when facing the press. And unfortunately, that extended hand never came. And there lies the reason why the two are just not that close even today.
All right, Omid Scobie in London. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
And a few things to know before you go. Investigators are looking into a deadly gas explosion that leveled 3 houses in Baltimore. At least 1 person was killed. Several were injured. It's not clear yet what caused that blast. Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best says she's stepping down after the city council voted to defund the police department. Unless vetoed by the mayor, the department will be cut by 100 officers and $3.4 million will be slashed from the budget. Best was Seattle's first black police chief. And more than 24 of New York's largest employers say they're coming together with a hiring pledge. The new group, called the New York Jobs CEO Council, says by 2030, its members will hire 100,000 New Yorkers, focusing on low-income Black, Latinx, and Asian communities. They say they're using their collective power to help underrepresented people struggling to navigate the workforce because of the pandemic. And that does it for this ABC News Live update. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. Up next, how one female-owned business is struggling to navigate the Paycheck Protection Program. We'll see you right back here at 11 Eastern with your latest headlines. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day.